This video is going to discuss what a thesis is and how to make a thesis statement. The thesis, as you know, is the central idea of your paper. Your thesis usually can be summed up in a sentence or two, which is called a thesis statement. Where does the thesis statement appear? Usually in the opening paragraph of your paper. It's often the answer to a question that you've posed. Or you might say it's the main claim you're making in the paper. Everything in your paper should help to prove your thesis, or should point toward your thesis. And you'll use primary and secondary sources to help prove it. So how do you create your thesis? You start with the question that you asked when you submitted your topics to me. The answer to your question is your thesis. If you ask a good question, your thesis, which is that answer, is going to be interesting, as will the rest of the body of your paper, as long as it helps to prove that thesis. However, if the question you ask has too obvious of an answer, then your thesis is not going to be all that interesting, nor will your paper be. So let's imagine that you chose the topic basketball as a topic for your paper. And then let's imagine that you narrowed it down and you asked the question, how does a person play basketball? Your thesis would be a description of how people play basketball, and it probably wouldn't make for that interesting of a paper. However, let's say that you asked a different question. Let's say that you asked how the NBA's policy that players have to be at least 19 years old and a year out of college has changed college basketball. I think that for someone who's interested in basketball, that actually would be a more interesting topic. So here's what a sample thesis for this topic might look like. We said a thesis is a central idea or a claim that a paper makes, the central idea of a paper. Here this thesis definitely makes a claim, it makes a strong claim that college basketball is harmed by this NBA policy. The rest of the body of the paper, if this was my thesis, would go to try to prove this claim. I might reference stats that would show that the quality of play in college basketball has decreased. I might also give quotations from coaches or other people who watch a lot of college basketball talking about how this policy has affected college basketball negatively. One final thing to note about the thesis statement is that it's actually 2 sentences long and not just one, and sometimes that's appropriate to use maybe a second sentence in your thesis statement. So good luck as you get started on your thesis, and refer to New Bedford Handbook pages 19 through 21 for any questions.